Well, for quite a number of years now, Mahmoud Abbas of the PLO was seen by many as being a weary leader, running out of options. That was until Friday, when he made a historic speech to the United Nations and lodged a bid for full membership of the body. After that, the Palestinian president seems to have a wave of new momentum behind him. He's arrived back in the West Bank now to receive this welcome. Thousands of flag-waving supporters turned out to greet him and his convoy, and some of the remarks that he made. Let's listen into a few of them.
I headed to the United Nations, carrying with me your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, and your pains, your sufferings, and your vision of the future, and your dire need of an independent Palestinian state. We reiterated to all and each that we wish to restore our rights in peaceful manners. Through negotiations, however, not any negotiations. We cannot accept but to have a legitimacy, and the Israelis totally and completely stop settlement.
Well, Cal Perry was there in Ramallah and joins me now live. Cal, moments of happiness, I suppose, a time for a degree of self-congratulation, but is this really a sentiment shared across Ramallah, and is this momentary happiness going to last?
Well, Ramallah is certainly a different city than the one Mahmoud Abbas left a few days ago. There are now huge posters on the sides of buildings like the one you can see behind me of the PLO chairman. Across the West Bank, I think Mahmoud Abbas is garnering a lot more support than he had just a few weeks ago, because he's taken on the cause. He's stepped out of the role of a president into the role of the PLO chairman, and he's trying to mimic really Yasser Arafat and what Yasser Arafat did in 1974 at the UN, and that's a message that's playing very, very strongly here across the occupied territories. There is, of course, still a split, though, within Palestinian society. Gaza, run by Hamas, and Hamas has made it clear they have nothing to do with this UN membership status. They are not involved, and they haven't been from the start. So I think it's fair to say across the West Bank, Mahmoud Abbas is returning to a place that's very friendly to him now. A lot of people seeing this as perhaps evening the playing field a bit between the Israeli Prime Minister and the Palestinian people. Let's not forget, we heard speeches just a few days ago of people saying, you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu gets standing ovations all the time in New York, but today really the first time that we saw a standing ovation at the United Nations for Mahmoud Abbas.
It's somewhat ironic, though, that he has stepped up, as you said, into this role at a time when his actual legitimate term has expired. What he faces now is much more than simply making peace with the Israelis. It's actually making sure that his own organization and his own people are united.
Right, and it's a lot of that is going to be about what kind of mandate he has to carry on and start talking to the Israelis. I think, you know, your instincts are absolutely right. He's in a strange position. He's no longer president of the Palestinian Authority. He's still chairman of the PLO, and now really what he's going to be faced with is not being in an official position of power, but being a man who's taken on this cause, who still has to control the West Bank. And we heard this, even though the speech was very short, he made it clear 3 or 4 times saying, I want people to peacefully protest. So I think his main concern is going to be staying away, one, from the negotiating table, because really the leadership here has made it clear they do not want to start negotiating again with Israel until they have some statehood, until they've changed the status of the talks themselves. So I think really he's going to have to hold off on sitting down with the Israelis, and at the same time he's going to have to try to keep the violence at a minimum, because if violence gets out of control here in the occupied territories, he may lose some support of countries around the world that he has now.
I mean, if I'm not wrong, we haven't actually seen any violence as yet. We've seen nothing but celebration so far, but that hasn't stopped the Israelis, the foreign minister in particular, and his entire support base of the far right talking about violence and talking about retribution for what Abbas has done.
Yeah, we've heard the Israelis saying they could bring up some tax issues, they could bring up some financial issues that could really hurt the Palestinians here in the occupied territories and in Gaza. I think one of the concerns that the Israelis have, and certainly I think the Palestinian leadership is starting to wake up to this, the violence they were worried about happening this week, again, like you said, we really didn't see that. We saw some demonstrations along what they call the seam line, which separates the occupied territories from Israel. I think the concern now is what happens when the UN starts their bureaucratic process, when this doesn't move forward, when we don't see a vote, when the people here do not see any real progress, then there could be violence. I think that's really what the Israelis are worried about. And let's not forget about Hamas. We're talking a lot about the support that Mahmoud Abbas is garnering here in the occupied West Bank, but Hamas in Gaza is still very much in control, still very much not involved at all with this UN bid. Right. It's, of course, possible that we could see some violence coming out of Gaza.
We shall wait and see. Cal Perry, live in Ramallah. Thanks, Cal.